Hello everyone, welcome back to another Makers Club. This week I'm going to show you how to make your own loom for weaving. I've done something like this before in Makers Club in the library, but I didn't actually show how to make your own loom. I did show how to weave, but I'm going to make a video on that anyway, and that's going to be next week's video. So the first thing that you need to make your own loom is cardboard or some type of like thicker material, but cardboard works best. The bigger you cut it, the bigger your loom is going to be and the bigger your weaving can be. So you need one larger piece of cardboard and then two smaller rectangles of cardboard because we're gonna glue them kind of like that. You need glue. This might not work, which is why I also have tape sitting here, but if you have hot glue or if you have actually like liquid Elmer's glue, that would probably be better than a glue stick. I just don't have any liquid Elmer's glue. And then you need scissors, and you might also need a pencil. And then we're actually going to set up our loom, and for that I'm going to be using just regular yarn, not too thick, not too thin. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach these pieces here onto my loom. And I don't want them to be too close to the edge because we have to cut our notches, and it's a little bit hard to do that. Actually, why don't we do that first? Let's cut our notches first. So if you want to, you can use a pencil to mark your notches to make them a little bit more even. And you can even, if you want to, you could use a ruler to make sure that they're really, really even. I don't think that I have a ruler here, but I do have this. Let's see. Oh wait, I do have a ruler. Alright, I do have a ruler, so I'm going to use that. But you don't have to. You could just do it by eye. And the closer your notches are, the more dense your weaving is going to be, but it's also going to be a little bit harder because when you're weaving, you're pushing the yarn under and over, which I'll show you next week, and it might be a little bit hard to do that by hand if your notches are too close together. If you have a yarn needle, that's a different story. Yarn needles make it a lot easier, so then you can put your notches a lot closer together. I actually do have a yarn needle, but I'm gonna show you next week how to do it both ways. And also keep in mind when you're cutting cardboard that it has the tendency to buckle and bend. And I don't want to show you how to do it with a razor because I know most people either don't have a razor at home or you might be too young to really use a razor. So instead I'm just going to show plain old scissors. And as you can see, I'm not being too precise with this. I'm not like measuring to make sure they're exactly equidistant. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Some of them might be further apart than others, it's okay. All right, our next step is going to be to actually cut those notches. So I find it easier because like the tip of your scissors isn't usually strong enough or sharp enough to like go through the cardboard without bending it. So I like to actually put it all the way into the scissors and then just a little cut like that. Doesn't have to be too big, just a little. So that's step one complete. Next, we are going to glue our smaller pieces of cardboard on. We're gonna glue them kind of right underneath where we made those notches. And now this actually helps when you're weaving. And actually, I'm even gonna cut these a little bit thinner. I'm actually gonna cut one in half and use that. It's the great thing about crafts is that it's easy to improvise as you go along. So we are going to use these, and I'm gonna flip this over so we're using kind of the nice size without the pencil marks. These help keep your yarn elevated, which makes it a lot easier to weave when you're working on it. So I'm gonna see if I can glue this down. glue might actually be tacky enough for this to work. I'm gonna try to get it as close to the top as possible. That way we have a lot of area to work with here. Because this area in between these two pieces of cardboard, that's how big your weaving is going to be. So if you have a really giant piece of cardboard that's really wide and really long, you're gonna have a lot larger of a weaving than this. And the weaving always comes out slightly smaller than your loom anyway. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. So that glue actually worked out for my purposes, especially since you don't need it to be too secure because the yarn is going to hold it down anyway. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my yarn. Let's actually count how many notches we have. So we've got 1, 13, 14. We've got 14 notches, so we're gonna need 14 pieces of yarn. So I'm just gonna lay one out like that, and then I'm just gonna cut the same length until I have 14 of them. That's 2. Obviously, whenever you're using scissors, be careful. 3. All right, so I've got my 14 pieces of yarn. Now, they don't need to be super even because when you're finishing your project, you can trim them to be even anyway. And they don't even need to be this long. So the longer that your yarn is, the more extra length you're going to have on each end of your weaving. And I wanna have a little bit of extra length because I think I'm going to make mine into a bookmark next week because you can never have too many bookmarks. So that's why I've made mine a little bit longer. Okay. And I'm just gonna give these a quick, even though I said they don't have to be super even, I'm just gonna give them a quick trim. Okay, and now what we're gonna do is we're going to lay our yarn onto our weaving. And you wanna make sure there's this kind of the same amount of extra yarn on each side of the loom. And then we're gonna just poke that in there and make sure you're staying even. So make sure if you're putting one side of the yarn through the first slot, it's going through the first slot on the other side as well. And we're just gonna do that for every single one. Check for evenness, hold that in place, pick it up, and squish it through, and try not to like bend these too much while you're doing it. And I'm gonna try to keep this on there. So now you can see that first one wasn't on this little cardboard piece, and you can see that it's flat against the cardboard, which isn't ideal. I should have made these pieces a little bit longer, but it's not going to be a huge inconvenience in the end. But you'll see with this one, and I'm just kind of holding the back of this with my hand so that it doesn't bend it over. You'll see with this one now, the yarn is on top of the cardboard and you've got that little extra space under there, and that's just gonna make it a lot easier to go over and under, especially under, if you have it laid on that cardboard. So I'm just gonna finish attaching these. I'm gonna probably speed it up so that you don't spend 10 minutes watching me do this, and then we'll come back. Okay, so we're all done attaching our string, and as you can see, we've got a nice little amount of space between our string and our cardboard. That's gonna make it a lot easier to weave, and like I said, we're gonna actually weave this next week. I've tried not to bend my cardboard too much, but I really wanted to get the yarn all the way to the end of that little notch just to make sure it's secure. So some of them got a little bent, but that's okay. I mean, cardboard is pretty much endless, so you can always, if you can't reuse this loom, it's not the worst thing in the world. You can just make another one. You can make them any shape and any size. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip this over, and as you can see, we've got a lot of loose string here. Now these are in here pretty tight, but when we start weaving, like, you're gonna wind up pulling on the yarn, and you don't want to accidentally pull it out, or you don't want to loosen it or anything. You want this to stay all pretty even. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our yarn and just twist it all up together, and I'm gonna take a piece of tape and I'm just gonna tape it down. Now it's probably better to use construction tape or electrical tape with this, but I don't have any of that, so we're just gonna use regular old tape. And maybe I'll even double tape it. All right, we're gonna do the same thing on this side. Just gonna twist it. All right, so the back doesn't look pretty, but that's okay. We don't have to worry about the back. We're only worried about the front. And we've got a nice, good loom started here. And next week, I'm gonna show you how to turn it into a weaving project. So you can make your loom, you can prepare it ahead of time with whatever color yarn you choose. Now the color yarn that you're weaving with probably will peek through a little bit, and definitely, the ends are going to peek through. So make sure that it's a color that you like. And a color that you want, like maybe your frayed ends to be your color that you want peeking through each of your stitches. Okay, so we'll see you next week, and we'll finish this up and make it into a nice little bookmark. All right, have a good week. Bye.